Have you ever just looked at a price tag and thought, wait, what? How did they land on that number? It can seem totally random, right? Well, it's not. There's a hidden logic to it all. So let's dive into this price puzzle and figure out what a price tag is really telling you. So let's start with a wild example. The airline Ryanair. Their founder's ultimate dream is to make every single seat on their planes totally free. Right now, they're part of the way there. A quarter of the seats are free. You just pay taxes and fees. Everything else, and I mean everything, is an add-on. Checking a bag? That'll cost you. Want a bottle of water? Pay up. They'll even sell you cameras and MP3 players right there in your seat. Which, brings up a pretty big question. How in the world can a company even exist, let alone make money, when its main product, the actual flight, is free?
Okay, now let's do a complete 180. A plain black t-shirt, except this one is from Armani, and it costs $275. And no, it's not woven from unicorn hair, it's mostly nylon and polyester. For perspective, you can walk into the Gap and get a shirt that looks pretty much the same for, what, 15 bucks?
And that's the other side of our puzzle, isn't it? What could possibly make a simple t-shirt worth almost $300? So you've got a free flight on one hand and a super expensive tee on the other. It looks like chaos, but I promise you it's not.
See, a price isn't just a number, it's a message. It's this carefully crafted piece of communication. In fact, it's the only part of a company's marketing plan that actually brings money in. And to understand it, we've got to look in two places. First, inside our own brains, and second, inside a company's strategic playbook.
All right, first up, let's talk about us, the shopper. The thing is, marketers figured out a long time ago that our buying decisions aren't really based on the actual price on the tag. Nope, it's all about how we feel about that price. It is 100% psychology. And the biggest concept here is something called a reference price. Basically, it's that number that pops into your head when you think about what something should cost. It's your gut feeling, your mental benchmark that you measure every single price tag against.
And it's not just one number either. We've got a whole collection of these reference prices floating around in our heads. There's the price we paid last time, what we think is a fair price, the absolute most we'd ever pay, and of course, what the other guys are charging. A really savvy marketer knows how to play with these different reference points to change how we see their price.
But here's the kicker. Price can also work backwards on us. We're wired to assume that if something costs a lot, it must be better quality. And when it comes to products that are tied to our identity, like that Armani shirt, a high price isn't a turnoff. It's actually part of the appeal. It's a signal of status. I mean, look at Ferrari. They could absolutely sell way more cars than they make, but they deliberately keep production low. Why? Because that scarcity, combined with that sky-high price tag, creates this powerful aura of exclusivity. For their customers, the high price actually makes the car more desirable because it means almost nobody else can have one. And of course, we have to talk about this classic trick. Why do so many prices end in a 9? Well, it's because our brains are kind of lazy. We read from left to right. So when we see $2.99, the first number, the 2, gets stuck in our head. We mentally file it away as a 200 and something item, not a $300 one. It just feels like a better deal, even though it's only $1 less. Okay, so we've peeked inside our own heads. Now let's flip the script and look at it from the other side. How do companies actually come up with their game plan? How do they land on that final number? Well, a lot of it starts with a simple model called the 3 C's. The first C stands for costs. This is your absolute bottom line, the price floor. You have to charge enough to cover making the product, shipping it, and selling it. If you go below this, well, you're not going to be in business for very long. The second C gives you a super important point of reference, your competitors. What they're charging and what they're offering for that price acts as an anchor. It helps you figure out where you fit in. Are you going to be the premium choice, the budget option, or somewhere in the middle? This decision is everything. And the last C is the most critical of all, the customer. What your customer believes your product is worth based on all its unique features and benefits sets the price ceiling. That's the absolute max you can charge before people start saying, nah, not worth it. So the perfect price lives somewhere between that cost floor and the value ceiling. So when a company enters a market, they usually pick one of 2 paths. The first is market skimming. Think about Sony's first HD TVs. They launched at an insane $43,000. They were targeting only the super eager early adopters, and then they slowly lowered the price over time. The other path is market penetration. That's where you start as low as you can possibly go to grab as much of the market as you can as fast as you can. Texas Instruments did this with their calculators and basically took over. But, of course, the world is always changing. And today, the internet and new ways of living are totally rewriting the pricing rulebook, giving rise to some really radical new ideas. I mean, take the idea of freemium. This is basically the Ryanair model on steroids. Red Hat is a billion-dollar company, and their whole business is built on Linux, which is free open-source software. So how does that work? Simple. They give the core product away for nothing, but they charge big companies a premium for technical support, stability, and all the custom services they need. And then you have this massive cultural shift that's created what we call the sharing economy. For a whole lot of people now, especially younger generations, it's just not about owning stuff anymore. It's about being able to access it, right, when you need it. And this shift has caused an absolute explosion of new business models. You can rent a designer dress for one night or, a literal castle on Airbnb. You can barter online, trading your skills for guitar lessons. You can share a ride with a stranger going the same way. In this new world, price becomes way more flexible and personal. So with all these things in play, our own psychology, company strategy, wild new technologies, how does a company actually finally land on a price? Well, that brings us to the final piece of the puzzle, a practical 6-step framework they can follow. And this is the roadmap. It's a 6-step process that pulls everything we've been talking about together into one logical flow. It all starts with the objective. Are you just trying to survive, or are you trying to completely dominate the market? From there, you figure out demand, you estimate your costs, you analyze your competitors. Only then do you pick a pricing method and finally select that single, all-important final price. This is the real logic behind the puzzle. So the thing to remember is that a price tag is never, ever just a random number. It's a story. It's telling you something about the company's costs, about its rivals, and maybe most importantly, it's telling you what that company thinks you value. So the next time you're shopping, just take an extra second to look at the price. What story is it trying to tell you?